Howdy ladies and gents, Jarek Defiler here with this week's patient gaming video. Today we are going to go over a little old game called Age of Empires 4. What I consider to be the true successor of Age of Empires 2, long may it reign. My gaming crew and I are pretty big fans of the Age of Empires series, particularly Age of Empires 2, and when word got out about a fourth being released, I was somewhat skeptical, mainly because the old guard that made the Age of Empires series so good was long gone. In this case, Ensemble Studios, who was responsible for some of the best strategy games ever to hit the market, Age of Empires 1, 2, and Age of Mythology. They developed Age of Empires 3 as well, but that's one, not really considered a classic like its younger brothers and sisters. Now, for those not familiar with the Age of Empires series, know that Age of Empires 4 is a fairly straightforward real-time strategy game where each match you build up your chosen civilization by using villagers and traders to gather resources, advancing through the ages, increasing your strength and economy through researching technology, and building up a big city or spreading out through expansion with a big army in order to dominate your enemies. The Age of Empires franchise isn't as heavy as games like StarCraft and StarCraft 2 when it comes to micromanaging your units. Generally, you set your villagers on a task and just let them roll with it. You do have to tell them what to build and gather naturally, but once they get started on a resource, they become automated and you only have to check on them when that resource runs out. Your armies you tend to just throw into the fray and let them do their thing. Granted, you can micromanage them a bit, it's just not really necessary unless you're trying to minimize losses. Age of Empires has a sweet spot with micro and macro that sits comfortably between games like StarCraft and the Total War series. It's a nice balance, and Age of Empires 4 straddles that line very well. And full disclosure, in this video, most of what I will be referencing will be in regard to skirmishes or custom games, mainly against the AI, as that is what I only play really. And being a patient gaming video, I'll be discussing a lot of this as if you, the viewer, is familiar with the Age of Empires franchise or RTS games in general. Now, when I got word of Age of Empires 4 coming out, I did my due diligence as a patient gamer and just waited and waited. After a year or two, I decided to finally grab it on a Steam sale and dove in. And boy was I glad I did, for Age of Empires 4 feels like it's going to go down as another classic in the series, mainly developed by Relic Entertainment, who partnered with World's Edge, an in-house studio under Xbox Game Studios. Age of Empires 4 takes much more from Age of Empires 2 than it does from 3, and this is a very good thing in my opinion, as Age of Empires 2 is considered to be one of the best, if not the best, strategy video games of all time. In my humble opinion, it is the best, but that's mostly subjective naturally. Anywho, what they did with the franchise was really the right move, holding true to its roots while implementing new mechanics and meta progression that don't feel forced or required. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, there is a progression system in Age of Empires 4, where you rank up your profile and can unlock various things on each individual civilization. But the best part is, it's all cosmetic. Thankfully, they got rid of the card system in Age of Empires 3, instead allowing players to customize their profile, giving them a little uniqueness when playing multiplayer or even just for themselves if they want. My little brother and I only play against AI, and we still have lots of fun unlocking and customizing our profiles. You can unlock different banners, sigils, statues, and profile pictures. Yay! Just fun little things to keep the game fresh outside of the actual gameplay. These unlocks are achieved through completing little challenges or achievements. I guess that makes sense, you do achieve achievements. Anyways, the further you go, the more complex the unlocks until you get to the last, which requires you to beat an enemy AI in hardest difficulty. Which isn't as hard as you might think, to be honest. You can also unlock fun historical facts in your progression. Things like how a civilization used to smith weapons or make advancements at a mill, or how many toes Genghis Khan had or some shit. I don't know, I never actually looked at many of those, but it's cool nonetheless, glad they're there. These are little things that they didn't have to put in the game, or they could have put them behind some silly gambling loot box system or credit system to pay and unlock or battle pass crap, but they didn't. Age of Empires 4 is a throwback to how games used to be. You buy it, you play it, and anything extra that's not an expansion just comes with the game. Good stuff. With the Anniversary Edition, the game boasts a total of 10 playable factions with 4 full-length single-player campaigns, as well as a hefty variety of challenges and training missions you can partake in for further unlocks, record holdings, or just plain fun. Compared to its predecessors, the civilizations have been mixed up quite a bit. Age of Empires 4 gives us the Abbasid Dynasty, which is my personal favorite so far, the Chinese, Delhi Sultanate, the French, English, Rus, Mongols, Holy Roman Empire, and with the Anniversary Edition comes the Ottomans and Malians. Or Malians, I guess. Yeah, Malians are from Mali, right? That makes sense. And with the upcoming expansion to be released in November, we will be blessed with the Japanese and Byzantines, which were my favorite civilization in Age of Empires 2. Breakdown. Unlike previous Age of Empires games, Age of Empires 4 really sets the civilizations apart. There are drastic differences between how they operate. It's not just who gets what technologies anymore, but each civilization has its own entirely unique systems, units, buildings, and technology as well. For instance, the Mongols can't mine stone. Instead, they have a building called an Uvu? I'm thinking Ovu, which passively mines stone for them, while also influencing buildings within range, allowing for improved technologies and or creating 2 units at a time. Mongols also can't build fortifications like walls, as they are a nomad civilization, which means they don't need houses either. Good stuff. My civ, the Abbasid Dynasty, doesn't build landmarks like the other civilizations, more on that later, instead creating one big building called the House of Wisdom, which is used to advance their ages as well as usher in a golden age via every building it has connected to its influence. Each tier of golden age adds increased resource gathering rates and eventually research and production speed. Every civilization has just as unique tech, systems, and buildings. No 2 civilizations are the same. This brings a great deal of longevity to the game, as there is always something to strive for in trying out and unlocking new stuff on each civ. This level of uniqueness is very different from previous Age of Empires games. Mostly in the past you would have little differences like gold gather rates, infantry health pools, trader buffs, little things like that. But in Age of Empires 4, it's almost like you're playing a different game every time you try a different civ. This is the highlight of Age of Empires 4 in my opinion, and what makes it stand apart from its predecessors. So what else does it bring to the table? Well, for those familiar with the franchise, do you remember all those times you couldn't utilize the market because you didn't have allies or were always playing 1v1? Well, now the game has neutral trading posts where you can send your traders to collect goods. They have them on naval maps as well, so you can send your trade boats out without having to have an ally or use the enemy's markets. There are some cool new features with walls where infantry units can actually get on top of them now, so you can post archers on the top, allowing them to rain fire down on your enemies. But be warned, your enemies can get on top of walls too. Also, cannons can't shoot through walls anymore, which is actually a pretty cool implementation in my opinion, because it makes it a bit more realistic and a bit more strategy focused. Towers can hold units to add to their attacks now, usually up to I think 8 units per tower, starting from 5. The more units, the more arrows come a-flying. A big change was the implementation of landmarks. These are each civilization's key structures you build in order to level up to the next age. To defeat an enemy in a standard game mode, you must destroy all their landmarks. This is a bit weird as there is no longer the Conqueror win where you just have to kill all enemy units and structures. We preferred that win condition far more than just having to target landmarks and prevent villagers from rebuilding them. In AI games at least, you also have to defeat the landmarks of all enemies on a team in order for that team to be defeated as a whole. You can ultimately decimate an enemy's civilization, but they won't ever be truly defeated until you do the same thing to their teammates. Odd choice of design in my opinion, not a game breaker or anything, just, well, odd. Also, landmarks vary wildly from civilization to civilization. As I mentioned before, the Abbasid Dynasty doesn't even have them. Some might be extremely powerful defensive structures, other might be used to produce units, and when you decide to level up, you can generally choose between which landmarks you want to build, so they are an interesting implementation. I just find it weird how the game's win conditions revolve around them. Naturally, there's a great graphical update in Age of Empires 4 as well. The art team had some really cool concepts. One of my favorites is whenever you're building something, you get this ghost element of villagers phasing around constructing or infantry building rams. It's a really neat little feature that adds some nice style to the game. Like prior Age of Empires games, each civilization uses their own languages, but this time around your villagers and units will actually represent their civ more accurately. For instance, the Malians, an African civilization, and the Delhi Sultanate, an Indian civilization, will have black and brown villagers and units. Pretty neat. All the clothing and buildings are appropriate and customs to each civilization as well. They had some of this in prior games, but Age of Empires 4 really outdid themselves with that aspect. It's not just some subtle reskins or building textures, they actually reclothe models for every villager and unit in the game. Pretty awesome. More shoutouts to the art team there. Whee! Scouts are required to acquire sheep, which is new. You can only gather them with a scout, but once the scout has them, the enemy can't take them. You then shepherd them to your designated structure, and the sheep will hang out there waiting to be slaughtered. Not a bad change, I guess, as it is safer and faster, unlike in Age of Empires 2, where you would capture a sheep and have them slowly walk back to your base by themselves, leaving them open for capture by the enemy. The combat is just like most Age of Empires games, albeit with more unique units based on the civilization. All in all, you just send your armies in to charge into the others, nothing too different there. We don't play multiplayer, instead just playing alone against the AI as I mentioned before, so I can't really comment on the balance of the civs in that regard. Also, most of the games I've seen tend to require mods, so there's that as well. They do have integrated modding that allows for easy click subscription, As of recording this, there are about 7,140 mods, most of which are maps, so not bad, break down. However, not every change is good in my opinion. I do have some criticisms. For instance, they removed the function to apply different stances to your armies. You can tell them to stand their ground, but you can no longer tell them to go on passive or defensive mode so that they don't run off just attacking everything in sight and eventually waltzing into an enemy's keep. They also removed the follow and guard function of Age of Empires 2, which allowed units to chase each other around like lost puppies or just protect each other. And a big one here, they got rid of spies, the tech that allows you to see your enemies, which was a baffling call in my opinion. There will be times where you basically wiped out the enemy, but they might have a villager or two running around rebuilding landmarks in town centers, and you have no idea where they are. That got frustrating, and games would last way too long, so as a result we just started playing with the map revealed, which kinda sucks, but that was the only workaround we had really. Your monks and priests can no longer convert people unless they're holding a relic, with the exception of some technologies on some civilizations, which was an odd choice in my opinion. Not sure if this was for the best or not, to be fair, although they can now convert en masse, which is pretty sweet. The AI can be somewhat lacking. Your troops will chase like crazy. I've seen some of my cavalry chase an enemy scout literally across the entire map. This often leads to them just running into enemy keeps and getting slaughtered. Only option is to micromanage or just keep everyone on stand your ground, which results in them taking range fire if you're not watching. This is a direct result of them getting rid of the no attack, defensive, and aggressive stances from Age of Empires 2. A lot of times your units won't know what units to prioritize when in combat, so a lot of times your monks will walk in and the cavalry won't protect them. Instead of opting to fight the cannons or the archers that are picking off everybody, they'll go around killing buildings instead. It's a little bit of a mess. But it still works. Granted, it's not horrible, it just could use some tweaking in my opinion. The enemy AI will sometimes register your clicks in harder difficulties, so if you're on a revealed map and you target an enemy with your units from far away, the enemy AI may retreat immediately upon you clicking on them. I've seen this consistently, it's very weird and don't know if it's intended or not. It seems to be just a way to artificially inflate the difficulty of the AI, but whatever. There's no auto scout option. In the definitive editions of Age of Empires 2 and 3, you could have your scout randomly run around the map, revealing it for you, controlled by the AI. That is not a thing in Age of Empires 4 for some reason. I mean, I don't know why, it's a great feature. Enemy AI naval choices spamming the hell out of fire ships. They will just send group after group of fire ships to you, your docks, your trade ships, everything that the fire ships can touch really. It's so annoying, but kind of funny at the same time, but still annoying. There's other changes that are hit or miss, but this video will take way too long to cover it all. Ultimately, Age of Empires 4 is a great successor to Age of Empires 2, and I think the devs did a great job pushing the franchise along without losing its spirit. If you're new to strategy games, this is a great one to pick up and learn the genre with, as it is fairly simple to learn and has a great deal of difficulty options and content. You can do campaigns, daily challenges, skirmishes, PvP, or just focus on meta unlocks. There's something here for everyone, and I applaud the devs and publisher for making a game with this amount of content and not trying to exploit the gamers by putting in microtransactions or some such nonsense. I know that might sound absurd to many strategy game veterans out there that a studio might do that, but in these times, nothing would surprise me. So I'm gonna end the video here, but yeah, Age of Empires 4, good stuff. Give it a try if you haven't already, well worth the money. And like I usually end my review videos, here's a snippet from the game's soundtrack. Composed by a variety of artists whose names I'm not going to even try to pronounce, the Age of Empires 4 soundtrack was culturally crafted to have each track represent its given civilization in the game. And it's awesome. Everyone gets their own theme music. This one in particular is taken from the French theme, the Maid of Orleans. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think of our beloved franchise in the comments. This has been Jarek Defiler, the Patient Gamer. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to help out the channel. You all have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night depending on where you are. Take her easy.